Unit 3, Lesson 7. In this lesson, we'll learn about sequences of rigid motion. So we'll describe and perform sequences of rigid motions on the coordinate plane, and we will describe sequences of rigid motions off of the coordinate plane. So what is a sequence of rigid motions? That is when more than one rigid motion is applied to map one figure onto another figure. And this consists of combinations of rigid motions, and our rigid motions are reflections, rotations, and translations. Remember, these all preserve length and angle measures. So it's important to identify what your pre-image is and what your image is so that the order in which you describe the rigid motion is accurate. And we know that because these are sequences of rigid motions, they produce congruent figures. And again, a rigid motion or a reflection, a rotation, and translation is a mapping, right? It maps points to points, angles to angles, lines to lines. So we have two notations that can be seen or used other than written words, right? If it just says describe, you can just write the words of how the transformations or the sequence of rigid motions has occurred. If it asks you specifically for a function notation, or they could ask you for composition notation. This is not as common anymore. We're more frequently seeing it just listed in words, and you're allowed to describe in words. So the rules we haven't seen as frequently. Does that mean they can't show up? No, they could show up. So we'll show you them, we'll expose you to them. But again, if it just says describe, remember that you can write words for that. So function notation, let's say we have a reflection in the x-axis, which will be the second thing that we do, and we're going to do that on a rotation about the origin, 90 degrees, on a triangle ABC. So what does this mean? That means you will do this first, do the rotation first. And on the image that you get from the rotation, you will then do the reflection. Okay, you'll reflect the image from the rotation. So what's another way that this could be presented to you? That could be a reflection over the x-axis composed with a rotation of 90 degrees on a triangle ABC. Right? You could put parentheses around that as well, like this. So again, we would do this first, and then we would do this on the image, from the rotation. More likely, you will see something like rotate triangle ABC, centered at the origin, perform a rotation, centered at the origin, 90 degrees, counterclockwise on triangle ABC, followed by a reflection over the x.